this raises the question. I know Ronnie struggles with this in his work, and we struggle with it too. It's the problem of how do you scale up in such a way that you don't lose the thing you have come to build and esteem and desire. It's a lot like the question we hear elsewhere in environmental policy. How do you engage people, draw them to wilderness without bringing so many visitations into wilderness areas that you destroy the very thing that you're trying to protect? It's a common problem, and it's an important one. I have a friend, Phil Landrigan, very influential public health expert who's done great work on pesticides, and he says, I love organic, I eat organic, I recommend organic, but for many people, organic is private school for food. It's great if you can find it, it's great if you can afford it, but we have a much bigger set of problems that we need to take on. Public health problems, like the chemicals that are in all of us, landscape problems, the pollution that we see, even in this beautiful valley, much less in other parts of the country where there's hardly any environmental footprint at all that's organic. It's all conventional. How do we do it? And for me, the question revolves around helping people understand that organic is still, for all its growth and promise and the incredible accomplishments, it's still pretty small. If you look in dollar terms, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, of course. If you look at the landscape and the actual amount of food that's produced organically, it's still small. I would argue too small. We want to grow it, but we don't want to grow it in a way that diminishes or undermines the very point of going organic to begin with. For example, if you look at the landscape, the amount of land that's farmed organically, we're looking at a percent or two of farmland and cropland and rangeland added together. We're looking at farmers that still number really in the tens of thousands who are certified organic, a small fraction of both factors. And as we all know, in celebrating change that's for the good, this is an example of how growth can happen in a sustainable, smart way that sustains not just the landscape and doesn't just produce healthy food, but supports livelihoods, supports families. And we need a rigorous debate about how we're going to do that going forward. If we feel so strongly that organic has become too big already, I think the question that we all have to ask ourselves is, how rigorous was our thought of this as a model for social change if from going from 0.2 or 0.3% of the landscape to 0.9% of the landscape, less than 1%, it fell apart. So it can't be that we are willing to give up because some aspects of organic have scaled too large, too fast, and have compromised the system. We have to push back at that from the standpoint of integrity, but it also can't be that we're willing to accept organic at such a small niche that we are not going to be able to promise future generations, the next generation, like my 13-month-old boy, when you grow up, organic's going to be easier to find, there are going to be more people involved in the industry, more of the landscape's going to be operated that way, a lot more than we now see. And I think some of the arguments Tim was making are key to that. Let me just tick off a few things, then we can discuss it, because my 10 minutes are just about up. We do need a vigorous debate about how to maintain the integrity of organic while we grow it in ways that sustain landscapes and livelihoods. We need to recognize that there is an appropriate role for government in this, and that the underinvestment for many years in organic research, development, technical assistance has taken its toll. It's helped slow things down. We're going through the first dent we've experienced in my time working on organic professionally, 20 years or so, the first kind of dent in the demand for organic. Hard hit from the economy, a hard hit from rising grain prices a few years ago. That's constrained the growth a little bit, a dent. But as we look forward, we know this sector is going to grow and it's going to prosper. How do we do that in a way that maintains its integrity? My feeling is we have to make sure the government's helping where it can and getting out of the way where it ought to. And then finally, as we recruit more farmers, and we've been working with Organic Valley to try and do that when land comes out of the Conservation Reserve Program, we've tried to reach out to those contract holders and encourage them to think about the organic option as opposed to a conventional option for how that land should be used. It's great land as a possibility for starting organic operations or expanding them. We want to make sure we have an option to do that, present it to farmers, and at the same time we're recruiting them, we need to keep recruiting and educating consumers so that their values for healthy, sustainable food and farming products never cease to grow. And we don't know what this is going to look like in 20 years, but I'll tell you one thing. I would be shocked if the very best practices 20 years from now weren't the practices that we see in place at Organic Valley. I can't wait to see what they do next.